Good morning. What I wanted to say is I think this third part is at the strategic level now. So what Doug and Shane did was a really nice job of setting up. And I like Doug's presentation where what he did is he said, here's operator training, here's how we used to do it. Now we're looking at P&IDs and documents and static information, and how do you integrate that now, and how do you make it more digital for people? And then Shane came in and he said, hey, this is what we're actually doing, and you see the dynamic life cycle of everything that touches an operator, and how do you have to integrate that? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you back up over, and we're going to talk a little bit about this first cautionary note. Now, I used to tease about this note years ago, but I've grown to really appreciate this note, because what this note really says is we are an industry and we should be sharing like we're doing. So the earlier presentation just gave you 2, 3, 4 great examples of what's going on. It helps you to see the relevance and the consistency of what's happening and how you can take it into your organization and apply it. So what this basically is saying here, we're not trying to sell anything. This is not an official Shell presentation for the market. It's, those things are on our website. And really what this is you have words like believe, could, estimate. It's what we are doing in our organization. It's how in our context we're trying to make our organization better. That's why I'm sharing this. I'll get good information from you, good connects with my industry, and our whole job together is to make a safer and a more reliable industry, and that's why folks like ARC put these things together to help us. This quote, I love the quote, but it's also an interesting quote, because if you think about where we were with digital 3 years ago, it was hype. It was everybody was forming teams and competencies and rolling out programs. And then we kind of hit a wall. We said, wow, this stuff's hard. Connecting things and integrating things across functional lines isn't as easy, and we're still in silos. So the pace of change is fast, and all of these things are still spinning as fast. Just like in Shell, we're implementing some big programs. To implement them, we slowed other things down. But in slowing other things down, you're still having to do activities, so it's still fast, even though you're going slow. So these are the kind of things you have to think about, is what pace are you in? Anytime I do an engagement, there's 3 things. 2 of them are on me, 1 of them is on you. I want to have you know a certain thing, and on this particular day, it's about the interconnectivity of moving from static to dynamic connectivity for the operator, okay? The thing you have to do then, after you get the cognition, you understand that concept, and I've got to get you to believe it. I've got to get you to trust what I'm saying, internalize it, and make a choice to say, yep, that's a good direction. So what we find oftentimes in this, the feel, is we have the intellectual capacity or we don't. And we have the physical capacity or we don't. And you have to have both of those things to actually make digital work. You've got to know how to do it and then actually be able to do it. And that's all in your capability. And the last thing's on you. You've got to take what Doug told you and what Shane told you and what I'm telling you, and you got to make it relevant to you for your context, for your work, for your industry, and your operations. So we're moving to dynamic connectivity. What's that look like? You've heard a lot about Industry 4.0. And this is the thing, the action icons. Every one of those actions. So when we use the steam to replace the power of a person pushing a plow, or a horse pulling a plow, or somebody turning a boat, rudder, that was what that did. And what that did is that created a hyper sense of newer things going on and ideas going off that. Then we had the light bulb. The light bulb illuminated the night. It increased the workday. So instead of 12 hours, we had 24 hours. We had continual operations. Martinez and Shell, that was the first actual plant to ever go 24/7 as a refinery plant. The bit then that you got into in plugs, now everything's a plug. I mean, you look how many people look at airports for plugs and phones. At some point, battery life's going to be so strong, we won't need the plug. So I say 5 years from now, all these cords and all the machines we have to keep our things charged and we chase them, We won't need them because our phone's going to stay charged for a month. Okay? Um, Industry 3.0, that was static. That was when we had what we called content shock. So you were able to take a hard disk, copy it, give it to somebody. They were able to take it, copy it, give it to somebody else. And we massively exploded how much data we have. And then we tried to put that data in our SharePoint systems and our other systems. It was all not connected, but tons of data. Now we're in the era of trying to say, well, now we're going to try to digitize that, tag that, index that, and piece it back together so we can make it dynamic. We struggle with that still. And then now we're in this cyber physical Internet of Things that started in 2011, actually in Germany. The cyber physical connectivity is taking all these things, sensors, drones, tags, and pulling them together. The problem is in industry today is we are capable of 4.0, but we're still operating in most infrastructures in 3.0. So we're capable, but are we able? And that's the question and challenge. I'm not going to go over this. I put the arc of drama. You know, the movies and the theaters you go to, they always have a hero and a villain and all those kinds of things. And this is what goes on in the digital age. So we go in here and everybody wants something. They want to be a hero. We're going to give you iPads. We're going to do this. And then there's the antagonist. It's the culture. It's the history. It's the legacy. It's the change, ability. Then you get to this point, you go to a site and you say, hey, I like what I did and I don't want to change it. And if you change it, that might be saying that you didn't like what I did 5 years ago. So I'm vested in how it is today. And then you get other things. You deploy VR and you say, oh, there's cloud pricing issues and all kinds of things like that. And then you finally get to the problem after you have an escalation of, oh, we're in trouble. Did we know what we were doing? And then everything works out, you've learned, and it's been a success statement, okay? The future of work is connectivity. Now, I put a big star kind of by that complexity and I made it green because these are the mega trends that are around us. But 3 years ago, the one that would have been green with the big star around it would have been technology. Because we got all these things we can do, all these things that we can do. Well, we've been playing with the technologies now for 3 years, and what we've come to now in the trend cycle is the complexities, the hardwiring one, okay? If you look at this little note on the bottom, and I made a little app thing, you got the Netflix and the Uber. Think about it. Think about where we are. Netflix, largest cinema without a seat, without a theater. Uber, largest taxi company without one car. So if you think about all these things, eBay, biggest store without a door. Okay, so this is where we go with these things. I'm going to go over this quickly because you'll get these slides, but my point is as we've moved in 2025, these are going to be our proportions of the workforce. And what I point to is down at the bottom. In the 40s, 50s, it was all about industrial relations, which was very linear. I've got labor, I've got capital, I've got machinery. That's the way the world worked and was treated. And then later on, we had social sciences that said, hey, we've got people, we're not so much labor, they're actually people, they're employees, and there's a science to how, what motivates them and not motivates them. Then we came into the 70s and said, well, people are actually a resource. Actually, they're a resource to draw on, and they're a resource to draw on. And then they became assets, okay, because they were being more complex. Where we're going now, and Shane had given me a nice example at dinner, I say it's influencer. That's the next stage of people. But Shane had suggested one of his leaders want to call their operators like race car drivers. So they're much more capable, they're much more agile, they're easier to reskill, they're easier to upskill, and that's how they work. So it's something that we're changing, and this is just the backdrop of why it changes. These are some family photos. The first one is my great-grandfather's shop in the city of New Kensington, and he had the Cadillac in front of it. He worked in that shop. You can see him down below. The other side with the guy in the front row with his arms crossed, that's my other great-grandfather, and he was a steel mill worker in Pittsburgh down the road from that shop. And the last one there, that's the building of the Pennsylvania Monument in Gettysburg. Now, as you can see, the bullets I have there, you can look at those and read those for yourself. But what we say is, people care more about relevance, employability, than they do about job security. And that's what it's going to have to be in the trends in the days ahead. If you talk about the workforce, my grandfather there, he didn't have any ubiquitous interfaces. His interface was a shovel. He had the machine he had a crank or a turner or a belt or something like that. And he had no data except what his supervisor spoke to him. So it's all these things. And if you look at them building the Pennsylvania Monument, there was no flexible workforce. We built America and other countries by work in the Industrial Revolution. So there was no anytime, anywhere. If we wanted to lay track, we went to lay track. If we wanted to build a monument, we went there. We shipped people in. Now we've changed all that. So all these things are changing in the world. That changing in a way that as we increase automation, we will make humans more human. And what I mean by that is people today, when you see them in a plant, you see them in a hallway, water cooler, they're busy. Because they're finding data, they're looking for it, they're sorting it, they're indexing it. All those things that our robotic friends are going to start to do as new entrants to our workforce, right? So our job is to find out what things are those sensors better at doing than the humans, and then what things are the humans better at doing than the sensor. And so we're going through that stage now, but it's coming along, I think, pretty nicely. But we've got to look at automation just as a new recruit. It's just as a specialized skill worker, and you got to figure out how you place and use them. And if you look at the research here, you also see that the requirements for more human-based skills is increasing pretty significantly. Judgment, problem solving, communication. Those are the things that humans today actually don't spend a lot of time doing. We don't collaborate. Hey, don't have time to talk right now, or hey, let's figure out the problem this way. That's going to change because all the curation of information and data that we can use through the sensors and the robotics and the AI is going to help us to do higher level thinking. So what we call higher order thinking skills. The flow of work. This is research on learning, but it applies to the worker. It applies to each one of you in the room. If you look at this, you are distracted, you are overwhelmed, you're impatient, you want to be untethered, you want to have things on demand, you want to collaborate with people you want to collaborate with, and you want to be empowered to go, come, do as you feel. That's what we're trying to do. We have to give people solutions that do that. We can't put an iPad out in the field without a strap. So, they're still tethered. You've made them digital, but you still tethered them because now they've got to hold this. Okay, so these are the kind of factors we have to think about. We have to have smart learning environments and smart learning assets, and that's what we're working to. So you look at all those bubbles as you have a learner, a worker, a plant, and you think about the complexity of that. It's each one of those bubbles is complex within itself. Now you're trying to unite a collection of complicated bubbles. So this is what we have to work on. This is the approach we're trying to take in the learning group at Shell. So we know there's an environment out there, and we're trying to make that environment cyber-physically connected and capable. Okay, so all the sensors, drones, all the things you see there in my little snow globe. Then you've got the individual, whatever they're wearing, whatever they're needing, but then you've got what's in their head over there, the task. And a task is comprised of the same elements pretty much. There's a start cue, an alarm, there's a completion cue, there are things in between. And what we've got to figure out is what of those things in between will we automate, how, and how will we connect them together to the worker. So that's what we're trying to do with learning in the flow of work. But it doesn't come without tension, challenges, and dilemmas. All right? So we do these things, and that happy guy at the Deer Park refinery in Houston, very happy to be holding his iPad. But that smile took some time. And that's the thing you've got to remember. This is not an easy journey. You're transforming from one industry to the other, and don't have both feet in Industry 4.0 yet. So you've got to be patient and you've got to learn. You're going to have that arc of drama throughout your days. I'll leave you with this. The constant, if humans are going to be in work, job, their skills is the currency of the future. So making people in the military has a big theme now where they're building the cognitive workforce, a more higher order thinking capable workforce. And that's what we want to go. So if you think about time and industry, we started kind of with our hands, we've moved to our hearts, and now we've got to get this whole body engagement. So I'll stop there and we'll turn it back over to Graham and Rick.